All right, Morgan, if you want to stop sharing your screen there. And it's 6:25 on Wednesday, February 10th, 2021, and I'll call the meeting to order for our Adelaide Metcalfe budget meeting. And we just had a closed session, and that started at 5:30, and that was under section 239 B, D, and J of the Municipal Act. And we're still working through that agenda, but what we've done is delayed some of the items that we can delay until the end of this presentation. So following going through the proposed budget and then looking at everything, we will be going back in the closed session to finish up the one topic. So with that, I'll ask if any members of council have any declaration of sharing interest or general nature thereof. Okay, seeing none. And we have all of our staff that we need on here now. Welcome, everybody. And what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Morgan, and you're going to go through a little presentation there and give us an overview of how we're going to be going through the budget for the discussions tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. Thanks everybody for attending tonight. We got lots of work to do. So a quick agenda. Really, I'm just going to quickly summarize our budget activities to date, just so that everybody is caught up and that the public is well aware of where we've come from and where we are today. We're going to talk a little bit about development charges or a DC study, and then we're going to go through each budget. We're going to review each budget. We're going to discuss the changes or variants that have occurred since the January 27th version of the budget. We're going to respond to any questions that were submitted for that respective budget that will be on screen, and then just provide council an opportunity for any additional questions, anything that you'd like clarification on, or any other discussion that you would like to have. So getting right into it. So December 23rd, we got a really rough draft of the budget sent out to council, just so that we could start thinking about where we are and where we really want to go in 2021. January 27th was our first budget meeting, where council received an updated budget package from the December 23rd version of that budget. Staff started to present their department budgets to council, provided opportunity for any questions or clarification at that time. But really what we were trying to do is talk about the township at a high level, so that we could start, Councillor Clark made a good comment about it. It kind of like a funnel. We started at the top, and we're starting to kind of whittle our way down into the more details. February 3rd was very much the same as January 27th. We also had received some questions from council and members of the public at that time with regard to the current form of that budget. So we addressed some of those questions and answers, and then council had an opportunity to discuss budget priorities and ask for additional information, one of which was the loan program. Which brings us to this evening's meeting. Council received an updated budget package. We're calling it the February 10th version, including a document outlining all of the budget changes or variances from the January 27th budget. So getting into development charges. So development charges, council had a bit of a training session, joint training session with Southwest Middlesex not too long ago, where we really got a 101 on development charges. It's an excellent tool to manage development along our commercial corridor. This is under the concept of growth pays for growth. One of the reasons why we would implement a development charges bylaw of some sort would be to help negotiations, to help discussions with Stratford Caradoc with regard to our servicing agreement along Highway 81 and how we use water and wastewater. The DC study is 100% recoverable should council proceed with the DC bylaw. So what we have to do is understand our development charges through the study. It'll result in a development charges bylaw, and that's really one more decision point for council to make whether we implement a DC bylaw. So the study cost would be about $30,000. There is an additional $2,200 for any extra meetings that we might have to have. So really we're proposing, or at least I'm proposing a budget of $34,400 to undertake the DC study. This amount of money is included in the February 10th version of the budget. So for council discussion, development charges study, as I said, it's included in the budget today, 34,400. If council chooses to do the study, it still has a decision point whether or not to adopt the resulting bylaw. So if the bylaw is not adopted, then the cost of the study is spent, it's gone. If the bylaw is adopted, then the cost of the study can be recovered. So I'll park it there for a moment. Council have any questions or discussion on this item?
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Is there any questions on development charges at all? Councillor Clark?
Just a general question for this study. What's the timeline for that study? Like, how long would it take for them to put that together?
It'll probably take a good chunk of the year. I think about 6 to 8 months to get it done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any questions at all? Other questions on this one? Seeing none. Okay.
Okay, so we'll carry on. The other thing that we need to talk to council about is really getting a really good asset management plan in place. So what we're proposing to do here is use our modernization funds to help us with our asset management plan development. And it really is going to look at finding some form of a software package and professional services to help us implement that software package. There is a lot of data entry, condition assessments, or other information that we really need to know about the township and its current condition of assets or however many assets we have, so that we can start to work towards really sound asset management practices going forward. So what I'd like to do is this can be outside of the budget, where we take a report to council rather than including it into the budget today. We can leverage modernization funds for this program. So I just wanted to park that there for now while we work through the rest of our budget. So really what it's time to do is review the budget. So what I'd like to do is present each department budget by the numbers, address changes from the previous draft budget. So the difference between the January 27th version and the February 10th version that you see. We'll address any submitted questions with answers, provide department heads the ability for any additional input, if any. We can work with council to discuss or have opportunity for any new questions relative to the budget that's on screen. And then we can move on to the next department budget. And then after we get through that, really the next steps are whether we would like to have another budget meeting on February 22nd. And then we work to prepare the final budget for approval at the March 15th council meeting. So this time I'll just offer opportunity for any questions, comments, suggestions.
Councilor McKinnon?
Through you, Mayor Curtis, to Morgan. On the budget summary page by department, you've got 2020 year-to-date actual. So is that to December 31st now?
So Jen, I'll ask you to answer that question.
Sure. Through you, Mayor Smith, to Councillor McKinnon, that is not year end as of yet. We haven't closed out 2020 as of yet. We're getting very much closer, but we're just not quite there yet. So that's year to date.
Okay, so the date is what? October, November?
No, the date would be November 30th.
November
It's
30th?
the last month of December that we're kind of keeping open because we have invoices that we haven't received yet for all the departments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at all from Morgan so far? Okay, seeing none.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring up the summary page of the budget. Give a quick overview and then we'll move into the departments.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to show council what's on the agenda package what I have on this on my other monitor is the actual Excel document. So as we go through any of these numbers, if they change, I'll update the Excel document on my left, and then we'll just use the other screen so that we can actually see the document that we're talking about. And then any changes that we make, I'll make sure to highlight in the new or in the Excel version of that document. I think that's okay for everybody. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So really right now, the budget is sitting at a negative tax rate increase of minus 1.3%. Currently I have under the municipal tax rate increase, you'll see in a yellow highlight, 0.07%. What that number represents is CPI from December to December of last year. And really what we're recommending as a tax rate, municipal tax rate increase, essentially so that we can continue to align with CPI. Any additional funds that we may or may not have today beyond our budget changes, that number in the orange, you'll see change. So right now, if we had a 0.07% increase, we have $57,000 available if that was council's prerogative. So right now, again, we're sitting at a negative 1.3% increase. Is there any questions on the summary page? Did I explain that very well?
It doesn't look like there's any questions at all so far.
Okay. So general revenues, I don't really have much to say about this. I know our OMPF grant was reduced, I think by about 14% or so from previous years. One of the questions that we got was about, well, actually, hey Jen, why don't you answer that, that question that we have for the general revenues?
Yep. So we got a question under municipal revenue. There's a 2020 income around 200,000. Is that modernization funds? So if you look under the 2020 column under local improvements, it's $214,064.43. That is actually local improvements that is put on taxes that consists of the wheelie bins, dog tags, drains, Kerwood Sewers annual billing, and Highway 81 debenture. Oh, and I should note, and the to answer the other part of that question, the modernization funds, the one-time funding, we got $308,554, and that was back in October 2019.
We'll pause there and look to council for any questions or clarification.
It doesn't look like there's any questions so far.
Okay, so there was no changes from the previous budget for council. And we didn't receive any questions that I'm aware of with regard to the council budget. So I guess I would offer council an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have.
All right, is there any questions at all on this department at all? Councillor Brody?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with this because the only question I had is, leaving the proposed budget for conference and conventions. I mean, and even if we don't do that, that will just, go back into a slush, basically, that will be in good shape for. I don't know if we should just reduce that because there might not be any, or we just leave it as is, just so we have some padding in that area, I guess.
Morgan?
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Brody, I would encourage council to keep this line item. There's still a lot of conferences that council can attend virtually if you'd like. And a lot of conferences are going, quote unquote, back to normal in 2021, but through a virtual means rather than a physical means. So if council anticipates participating in any conferences, you'll absolutely have the opportunity to. And a lot of the costs for participation aren't much cheaper than what they were when we were in a physical environment. I think they're like 20% or 25% less.
Okay. Is there any other questions at all in this department? Okay, not seeing any other ones.
Okay, so there were a number of changes in the administration budget from the January 27th version of the budget to February 10th. We received $18,000 from the province for COVID-19 operational dollars, and this is to address operational impacts or operating impacts on the budget. So we added that. We also received $65,000 in COVID-19 funds last year to be used for things like supplies. So we've proposed a transfer of about $19,000 from that COVID-19 fund to offset a number of increases that we're seeing relative to COVID. Again, so that's cleaning costs, additional cleaning costs relative to COVID, and then the COVID-19 supplies, so face masks, hand sanitizers, or otherwise. So that's the revenue section. Under expenditures, we've reduced mileage and travel from 2,000 to 1,000. Sorry. So anything highlighted in blue, sorry, on the right-hand side, those are numbers that have changed since the previous budget. So consulting and engineering has essentially been increased from 25,000 to 44,400. The budget was initially reduced to $10,000 for things like site plan control or other engineering things that we need to have done on behalf of the township. However, we added the $34,400 for the development charges study. So I guess at this time, if council wishes to undertake the study, then we leave the money in. If council does not wish to undertake the study at this time, then we can remove that money. I would highly recommend that we keep that one in there. Training was increased from $1,500 to $4,000. This is to encourage training and development of staff and provide a budget for it. A lot of training opportunities have moved online, so it's fairly cheap. We don't need travel at that point. We removed the communications and building services position. Repairs to maintenance and facilities, we added $8,000 for the replacement of the municipal office generator. Coulter will be bringing a report to better speak to this issue at the February 16th council meeting. The audit and accounting was increased from $19,000 to $25,000 based on the audit proposal. Again, this one will be delivered to council in report form on February 16th. And that's it for the changes in administration. Jen, any questions?
Yep. So you touched on the one about the consulting and engineering. It was reduced from 25,000 to 10,000, then it was increased, and that's for the development charges study. So as Morgan said, if council wants to keep the money in there, then we can move forward with the development charge study. If council doesn't want to move forward with the development charge study, then we can remove 44,400 for the development charge study. There was also another question in relating to mileage. Does mileage need to be less since restrictions are likely to be around for a little while longer? And the mileage was reduced from 2,000 to 1,000. There's also one other one here. In administration, will there be any renovations or upgrades to the office as budgeted for 2020? And there are no renovations or upgrades planned to the municipal office at this time. You'll also get a report from me later on in open regarding the 2020 budget transfers that council needs to review for consideration.
I think that's it.
That is it.
Okay, so we'll kick it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Alrighty, is there any questions at all from council? Deputy Mayor Hendricks?
Yeah, the development charges study, I have to admit, I know very little about development charges. When I got on council many years ago, it was kind of like, well, we don't have development charges. And I think it was believed to be an incentive, and I don't think that that's borne out at all. So I think it's a good thing to at least know what it is and what it will do for us and what it won't do for us.
Okay. Is there any other questions at all on this department at all? Yeah, Councillor Brody.
Yeah, I'd just like to chime in a little bit through you, the mayor, on what Mary Ann said on that developing charges. Yeah, it sounds like a bunch of money to add to a line item, but we're going to look deeply into the edge of Strathroy with Strathroy Caradoc. We have to know really what's going on there. So I don't think this is going to be a bad idea at all. Yeah, it looks like we're spending more money there, but we really need to know what we need to do to get that right. So I'm in support of leaving it there.
Okay. Is there any other questions at all on this budget or on this department? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I might have a question. I just have to figure out if it's a no-no to ask it or if I'm allowed to. I just want to see if it was mentioned, like from a confidentiality thing. It was around the accounting. And I better not ask that question. I'll ask it maybe Monday night.
Okay. Councillor Brody?
Yeah, just back to the reserves, transfer from reserves in the 2020 actual for up in the revenue. That was if we were going to take that out of the reserve to do office upgrades. Was that 200,000? Then it never did get, it went back in, correct?
Through you, Mayor Smith, Councillor Brody, that's my report that I emailed out to council that council needs to review for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It doesn't look like there's any other questions at all in regards to this. I will just note with the development charges, I think it's always a good idea to look into that. And I realize that it is a large number. However, when we're looking at Highway 81 and having with that servicing agreement with Strathroy Caradoc, I think that'll make things move along a lot smoother, looking at development charges along there. And seeing, with those charges, it's more about looking into the future as to, once there is development happening and paying for those future costs that the development causes. So I think it's a good idea to look at it, to see what we should be doing. And I believe that our neighboring municipalities are also looking at it at the same time. So it's always good to work together to see what different opportunities we have. I think I saw Councillor Clark, you put your hand up.
Yeah, so Morgan, are you going to speak to this audit thing on the 16th? Like are you doing a presentation as to why we're going from 19 to 25?
Yeah, there'll be a report that outlines the additional costs, but it really is because the auditor understands the challenges that we've had in 2020 and that we have to take a very thorough look at some items that have popped up. So okay. It's really more about
I just as a ratepayer, not as a counselor, I'm looking at your organizational chart where you're proposing a treasurer, half-time FTE, and if you've got more people doing the heavy lifting for the financials, in theory, you shouldn't be paying more to your auditor. So I'd like to see what that looks like on Monday night. That's all. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Clark, that's a good point. If we get staff doing more of the audit work, that's going to reduce that burden.
And not a big deal, but just for clarification, when people are listening, our next council meeting will be on Tuesday night because Monday night is family day. Well, the whole day is family day, but so it'll be on Tuesday. Is there any other questions at all on this department? Okay, seeing none.
Okay, we're on to the fire department. Okay, so a couple changes since council last saw this budget, we added in revenues about $2,500 for multi-vehicle crash recoveries. If there's any other questions on that one, I'll get the chief to answer that. We also adjusted salary and wages, which was reduced from just over 188,000 to 160,000 to address recent employment changes and a reallocation of training dollars to the training budget. So you'll see that the training budget here has been increased by $10,000. That's because we took the cost out of the salary and wages and put it into training. And then the salary and wages budget was updated to better reflect recent employment changes. Fire inspection was reduced from 8,000 to 6,000 to better reflect anticipated inspections in 2021. There is a bit of a buffer built into that budget in the event we need to address an emergency. And then, of course, training was increased from 5,000 to 10,000 to account for the external training. Sorry, 5,000 to 15,000 to account for external training. Jen, any questions from fire?
It's question number 9, I think, Jen.
Yep, you're right. So fire, there is a fee charge for fire inspection performed, no income budgeted. Just wondering if it should be a cost recovery item. $8,000 divided by 20 inspections equals $400 per inspections. And the answer to that is fee schedules will be reviewed in 2021. At this time, there's no fees charged for fire inspections. This line item has been reduced to $6,000.
Okay. And is there anything else before I go to questions, Morgan?
Oh, well, unless the chief has anything that he'd like to add. Chief?
Yeah, thank you. So under fire inspections, it also includes fire investigations when needed. And those could be, they could take up to 10 hours, depending on the severity of the fire and the building, property, et cetera. So, you know, one fire, that could be an expense of $500. So that's included in that $6,000 figure.
Okay, thank you for the clarification there. I think Councillor Brody, you had your hand up.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Fire Chief. So when there is a major inspection, so if there's a major fire, has there been any procedure? And I don't know if this happens anywhere else, but is that something that you can bill back to an insurance company on whose fire that was to cover that cost, or is that not kind of normal practice?
Yeah, no, that is, there's never been a charge for that. And if it meets the criteria where the OFM gets involved, so if it's over $500,000 loss, if there's fatality, if it's an explosion, and a number of other things, then the Office of the Fire Marshal sends investigators down at no cost.
Okay.
But anything below that, and under the FPPA, all fires need to be investigated. So anything that doesn't meet that criteria, we have to do ourselves.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Okay. Is there any other questions at all for the fire department? Okay, I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so we'll move on to policing. So no changes to this line item and no questions were submitted for policing. So I guess I would offer up any questions, comments, or discussion for council.
Is there any questions at all? This one is kind of straightforward. We get a bill from the OPP and we got to pay it. There's not really much we can do.
So,
Councillor Clark.
yeah, here's just to educate me, because I don't know, you're talking about a policing grant, and I see back in 2018, we got almost $5,000, 2019, and nothing in 2020. So just to educate me. So for example, and I'm making this number up because I don't have it recalled to memory, but the town of Strathroy got a grant for human trafficking, their police department, and I'm making this up, it might have been like $50,000 or something. So is that the sort of thing we would see on this line if we were ever able to get money like that?
Jen,
So
Julian.
through you, yeah, so through you, Mayor Smith, Councillor Clark. Again, these are not our actuals, so they're year to date. So there was a part grant that came in. I want to say it was around 1,500, but without looking through the records. So that still has yet to be posted. And again, we don't have control over that. It's OPP does reconciliation with their billing versus the amount of calls that they tend to in our municipality. And that's where the grant comes from. It's not really a grant, it's more of a reconciliation, and the difference comes to us.
So it's strictly OPP.
Yeah.
Just adjustment, really. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other questions at all?
But if we did get, I do, sorry. So just so, because I want to understand this. So if we ever did get a grant similar to the one Strathroy got, it wouldn't show up on this then. It would have to show up somewhere else because this line item 6220 is strictly for OPP. Yes? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so that's the difference. We are OPP, where Strathroy Caradoc has their own own police department.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to say, if we were ever to receive monies like that, it would have to show up as a separate line item, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Deputy Hendricks, you had your hand up?
Yeah, it was just kind of a comment, like, this is just basically the bill we get, and the reconciliation really doesn't amount to much. So at one time I was thinking that, you know, maybe if we could do something to reduce number of calls in the township, but I don't think that's something that we can manage or bring down or anything. So it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Big number.
Yes. Yeah, it certainly is.
It would be nice if we could mitigate that somehow. But anything like a Crime Stoppers program, there's costs with any of that too. So, or Neighborhood Watch. So I don't know that we can reduce that number a whole lot.
I don't think so. All right, Morgan, you want to go on to the next one there? I think it's the conservation authorities.
Here we go. So again, with this budget, no changes and no questions were submitted. So I'd offer council opportunity to discuss or ask questions.
And I think we've had both of the conservation authorities attend our council meeting, so they had council has had an opportunity to ask them any questions. But is there anything at this time? No. Let's keep on going.
We'll move on to building inspection. So again, the building department's cost recovery department. Any revenues are also expenses. Any additional revenues would be banked into a reserve to refund the department. We haven't had any changes since the last budget, and no questions were submitted. So over to you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Is there any questions at all on this department at all? Okay, another one that's straightforward, but this one it's just, yeah, it's cost recovery for us with the permit fees. So
okay, so I'll skip the sub-schedule. We'll get into livestock.
Yep.
So not much going on here. This is a very reactive budget. No changes and no questions submitted.
Okay, is there any questions at this time from council? Seeing none. You're looking at
Looks like,
provincial offenses, number 13.
Yeah, I'm just looking for animal control.
Animal controls under administration.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so provincial offenses. This is revenue, no changes and no questions submitted for this budget. So I'll turn that over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there any questions at all? Okay, just going back to your comment there, Morgan. So on the summary sheet, we have, what's going on with that page? There we go. On the summary page, it has animal control as its own separate
Oh, that's not in here.
item. And then on the previous budget, it was a department.
Yeah, I think we missed that one, but I have it here. I'll pull it up at the end. So
Okay.
we won't, I've written it down. We won't skip over it. I'll bring it back at the end.
Okay, sounds good.
And then we'll get the agenda updated.
Yeah.
Okay, so by law enforcement, no changes and no questions submitted.
Okay, is there any questions at all? Okay, seeing none.
Roadways. All right. We got some changes and we got some questions. So in revenues, we didn't have any changes. In expenditures, we've updated the roads wages to better reflect the current position on the compensation program, which reduced the overall line item. Roadside maintenance was reduced. Ditching was reduced from 10,000 to 5,000. Entranceway was reduced from 20,000 to 10,000. The fuel for vehicles was reduced from 50,000 to 15,000 to better reflect usage in 2021. And we've, the foreman full-time position remains. So Jen, I know we have a couple of questions. Can you read those off?
Yep.
Please.
Okay, so roadways, town line billing income for 2020 is how much? Year-end processes have yet to be completed, and this will be addressed as year-end. There was also a question regarding the fuel budget, that it seems high. What's the rationale? Fuel budget was reduced from 50,000 to 15,000 to better align with anticipated usage in 2021. And there was also another question, roadways, is Mowa Drive asphalt to be included in the budget or not? It is listed in H, but no dollar amount included. This is not included in the budget to date.
Thanks, Jen and Coulter. Maybe you can better explain the fuel change and then the roads projects, please.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Yeah, the fuel, we did drop down to 15,000 from 50. That reflects no real massive construction projects like Scotchmere or Walker's Drive. Historically, the last bunch of years, we've ran, 3 and 4 tandem dump trucks for 3 or 4 months straight. So that's why that number was a lot higher. So we went back and looked at it. And again, depending on the winter, how severe it is. So we felt like dropping to 15 was a better number for 2021. What else did we change?
Coulter, before you keep on going, Jen, can you mute yourself? Coulter has a great deep voice that's echoing into your room.
That is nice because I can hear myself as well. We also, Morgan touched on, we changed on some of the roadside maintenance numbers. And again, historically, some of those numbers were a little bit high, and we wanted to reduce the budget as best we could and keep it more realistic. So we did drop some of the ditching numbers down, just because when it comes to the ditching, lots of times that is allocated to a certain project. It's just not random. So we just wanted to lower that down, and entranceway costs, again,
We wanted to cut them, as that number has historically been high, and that number seems a little more realistic. Lots of times those are cost recovery. Yeah, other than that, when it comes to the road, capital road construction projects, I touched on this in the presentation there a few meetings ago. School road, again, I think it's, I hope it's a go this year. I know we talked last year about it, Denning as well. And then Napier Road, it would be a surface change. So that's going to be a gravel road, changing over to a tar and chip road. We feel like not hot asphalting that and just doing a double coated tar and chip is a better process for that road, just because it doesn't get the heavy traffic. Because of that bridge, we did lower the limit. It's a better process for Napier. And Melwood Drive, it was brought up in the questions. It was proposed for this year. We figured we would take it out just to have a more realistic number. Again, it's Melwood Drive would be kind of like what we did to Catesville Drive this year. It's an asphalt lift. It updates the surface before it gets beyond repair and extends the life of the road to another 10 to 15 years. It's just a really good candidate to update that surface instead of having to tar and chip that another probably 2 years, and then 6-7 years after that we will have to pulverize it and then hot asphalt it, which will increase the cost. So that's the only project really that was on target for this year. Other than that, if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Is there any questions so far? Councillor Brody?
I have a few. I can't believe that we can operate a township on a $15,000 fuel budget. That seems ridiculously low to me.
Again, yeah, those numbers aren't to date. I think we've spent 12 up to November. There wasn't a ton of construction projects this year, and some of those, when we do, we find it is cheaper to hire out that hauling. And again, as of November, we really didn't do much snow plowing, so it will come up. But and yeah, it might be 20,000 this year, depending on winter and construction projects. But 50,000 was realistic for those Scotchmere and Walker's Drive projects, because we were all hands on deck for those. So yeah.
I guess just for that low of a number, I'm just wondering, because we have 4 big trucks, 2 graders. Man, that doesn't seem like much fuel. I know how much fuel I go through, and I wish it was that number. I don't even be close. So I guess I'm really questioning that number for how much equipment we have, or the wheels aren't really turning on the equipment that we have.
A little side note on that, I didn't want to get into too much, but I think it was allocated again above that in the fuel, equipment, and machinery. So it has been split up. I don't love that, just to better track it.
Oh, I see. So we have fuel up in the fuel equipment.
Yeah. So there is 2 of those.
2 fuel. Okay, that makes a little more sense to me then.
Okay.
But it is proposed that we're going to put a system in the tanks that we know what each department was going to go through, right, in each vehicle.
Yeah. So yeah, we want to track it a lot better on which vehicle. So yeah, there are 2.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially with the building department, it's just a lot easier. Then we can allocate the funds correctly. Okay. So yeah, between the 2, there's $40,000 worth of fuel.
That seems more a better number. Okay, that one had me a little bit confused. Then my next question is how much, I probably have it somewhere in here, but how much is the Melwood, would it cost to do Melwood Drive?
It would be 260,000 to do it. It's 3.5 kilometers. And again, it would look exactly like the Catesville Drive project this year. Okay.
So then you're basically proposing that we just hold it off a year and it'll be on the next one.
Yeah, it was again a toss up between that and Napier. Napier is a surface change, and Melwood Drive is more of a maintenance life cycle change. So, yeah, in the next year or two, it'd be nice to do that one instead of just tar and chipping it in 2 years and then having to pulverize it. So,
Okay, but it's okay right now, basically.
yep.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor McKinnon.
Yes, through you, Mayor Curtis, to Coulter. Coulter, up under roadside loose top road maintenance, we have $230,000. Is that for granular A gravel or B?
Thanks, Betty Ann. Through the mayor to Betty Ann. I have numbers here somewhere. That is for A gravel.
A gravel?
Yes, and I did look into that dock gravel that we talked about last year, Betty Ann, and it is twice the price.
Yeah.
So just to basically give you an example, let's say on Scotchmere Drive last year, we did put an estimated $30,000 worth of A gravel on that. And if we did do that dock gravel, it would be closer to 60,000 just for those 3 blocks. Just to give you an example of how much that dock gravel is.
Yeah, I realize that it's more expensive, but I think it's also less expensive to maintain it because of just the way the material is and how it binds and holds the road to a better road, actually. But thank you.
Is there any other questions before I go back to Councillor Brody? Councillor Brody?
Yeah, just a question on what Betty Ann said. What is the standard around most of the townships just still using A gravel?
In Middlesex, A, yeah.
Yeah.
In Lambton, it's dock gravel.
Okay.
And Coulter, what Benny Ann's talking about, would that a road, if somebody's watching us online or later on YouTube, a road like that, would that be over in like in Brook Elphinston on Sexton Road, the section that they maintain? Is that be gravel that, or the gravel that Betty Ann's talking about?
I'm not 100% sure what they use there on Sexton. I haven't talked to Randy on what they use. I've just talked to guys around here, and I reached out to a few of the gravel contractors and some of the professionals in the business, and they do believe that dock gravel is better for sure. To say it's worth twice the price, that's a decision that obviously we all can make, but I do think the A gravel has done a pretty decent job. But yeah, dock gravel is better.
Okay. All right. Is there any other questions at all for Coulter and the roads department? Okay, seeing none.
Okay. Thank you, Coulter, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. We'll keep going. Everybody can see that?
Yeah.
We're good? Okay. So the only change to this budget is just more of I added a note at the bottom, which this $105,500 is an in and out for a infrastructure debenture along Highway 81. But that's the only change on this particular budget, and we didn't receive any questions. So I'll lob that over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Alrighty, is there any questions at all on the Highway 81 sewers? Okay, seeing none.
Okay, so Kerr Road wastewater treatment plant, again, no changes to this budget, and I don't believe we received any questions. No questions.
Okay, is there any questions at all from members of council? Deputy Mayor Hendricks?
Yeah, it's not really a question, but a comment that I hope this in the next year, a couple of years for sure, gets more to a user pay type. Because the other ratepayers in the township are paying 50% more. Well, a third of the cost of this, and I don't think that's right. So
Okay.
I hope we can move on that.
Morgan?
Mr. Mayor, through you to Deputy Mayor Marianne Hendricks. One of the primary tasks of the incoming treasurer is to look at all of our fees. We have a number of departmental fees that are related, and this would be one of them. So council can expect some form of a study and a report in 2021 or early 2022 at least.
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Brody, you had a question?
We're gonna see a summary about that, so I'll voice my opinion on that one after when we see it.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next one.
So waste collection, no changes to this budget, but Jen, I believe we have a question.
Oh, Jen,
you're on
mute. I'm sorry.
Sorry. The question was, what is the 80,000 revenue and waste collection? So if council remembers, back in August 22, council changed the delivery program from bi-weekly pickup in the rural areas to weekly pickup. This resulted in an additional $50 per household. However, due to the timing of the decision from council and the final tax bill preparation, the additional $50 per household was not applied to the 2020 billing. Therefore, it's not reflected in the 2020 revenues, but will be in the 2021 revenues. And the township receives updated spreadsheets from Blue Water Recycling Association that identify wheelie bin changeouts. And 80,000 is an estimate revenue at this time, but can be expected to be higher based on changes within the system over the course of the year.
Okay. Is there any questions at all from council? So Jen, just so I understand and the public understands. So we've all received, or we will be receiving, our interim tax bill, and there was no user fee for garbage on that. So then in the summer, which we have the final tax bill, what will that dollar amount be for the fee for the garbage bags or garbage bins then?
Yep. So the fee will be $100 because that's what the weekly residents were already paying, and that's what the rural residents will be paying is $100 because that's what the weekly charge is. That's on the what is that? The small bin. It's whatever the cost of the bin is plus the $50 on top. So the $50 is what makes it the weekly. It depends on the size of your bin because we had the 3 different sizes with the 3 different fees. So it's whatever the size of your bin is, that fee is attached to it plus the $50, and it'll be under wheelie bin under your local improvements on the final tax bill.
Does everybody understand that? Okay, I think we're going to need some communication probably out to the public if that's the case, because I think the last newsletter that they received was, I think it was like $50 for the small bin, $95 for the medium bin, and $130 something for the large bin. So I think we need some further information out there, because I don't think that the public understands that it would be higher than what they paid last year. And the reason I say that is because I didn't understand that either, but maybe everybody else did. Deputy Mayor Hendricks and then Councillor Clark.
Yeah, and I think any other communication that you would put out, I think, you know, people get upset about the cost of that, but they have to realize that, I mean, there's still almost $100,000 that it costs the township on top of the cost of their wheelie bins. So they need to know that the cost of those wheelie bins are subsidized, and if they made less garbage, it would cost them less.
Okay. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I agree with what your comments were, Mayor Smith, because in the tax bill that just came last week or the other day, there was a flyer in there for the recycling, but all it does is say the 50, 90, and 135. There's no mention of the extra 50. So that's, I mean, just it's not a big deal, but to some people it might be. So they just should be made aware.
Okay, is there any other questions at all? Councillor Brody?
Just a comment. I'm very happy that it comes every week. That's a lot nicer.
I didn't have to put mine out this week. I put one bin one week and one bin the other, and sometimes I don't put anything out. But I don't have kids in my house.
Yep.
Alrighty, let's move on to the next one then.
Okay, so for landfill, the only changes were a transfer from reserves of $15,000 to accommodate the Kellen landfill closure plan of $10,000 and the landfill expansion costs of $5,000. I don't think we received any questions. So Coulter, I'll ask if you have anything that you'd like to add to this discussion.
That was pretty good, Morgan. We just wanted to get that extra 5,000 in there to transfer from reserves just to cover those costs. I think that's why we have reserves for stuff that comes up like that, for closure fees or what have you. So.
Alrighty, is there any questions at all for the landfill?
Nope.
Okay, and Morgan, the last time we met, we were talking about the salary and wages. That is the correct number?
Yeah, that's the correct number.
Okay. The next one is...
Moving on.
Yeah, recycling.
It's a zero-based budget. There is no questions, no changes.
I assume there's no questions? Yeah, there's no questions, sorry.
Cemetery, so we had a couple changes. No changes to revenues, but the maintenance and grounds was reduced from 2,000 to 1,000. Maintenance to stones and monuments was reduced from 2,000 to 1,000, and grass cutting was reduced from $7,500 to $5,500. And this was based on the discussion from the February 3rd meeting with council. I don't think we have any questions submitted, so I'll kick it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there any questions at all from council? Okay, seeing none. Move on to the next one.
Okay, trees, no changes and no submitted questions. And I'll send it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there any questions on this one? Okay, don't see any questions, and I think Coulter, that's on your list of things to do for the policy on that one, I think, going forward for those trees.
Yes, Mayor Smith, that will come to council for their consideration, just on getting a better or a policy in place for that. So it's better, it's brought out better to the public. So yeah, you'll see that come across.
Excellent. Okay, on to Parks and Rec.
Okay, so Parks and Rec, we had one change from the previous budget. From grass cutting was reduced from 6,000 to 4,000. Jen, I believe we got a question.
Yeah. So the question was wondering where the 100,000 in fees that's coming in on the revenue side. So the very first line under revenue. And this is the anticipated COVID-19 infrastructure community program grant from the federal provincial government. And this line item is here because it's anticipated of a successful grant application.
Is there any questions at all for the Parks and Rec budget? Councillor Brody?
Yeah, I just want to make sure 4,000 is enough for grass cutting because I'd hate to see us go backwards like we were a few years ago. So I just, as long as that number is not reduced to chintz the number of cuttings, as long as it's more just an average reflection, I'm okay with it. I just don't want to go backwards there.
Okay. I saw Coulter shaking his head no, meaning that we're going to make sure that it's cut properly. I assume that's what that head shake was.
Yes, Mayor Smith. That's just going off the last 3 years of average. We are not going to let that go downhill. So, not to worry there.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions at all? Okay, not seeing any. And okay, go ahead, Morgan.
Okay, so planning and zoning, no changes from the previous budget, but I believe we have a question, Jen?
Yeah, there's a couple. So planning and zoning expenditures with the legal invoices be allocated to the planning and zoning expenditures, or will they be left in the administration budget? They will be allocated to the appropriate expenditure under the planning zoning budget. And the other question was, how are the service provided by the county paid for, since I do not see any wages or contracted services? Are these services provided by the county incorporated into why county taxes are collected? These services are incorporated into the county levy.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. Is there any questions at all from council for the planning budget? Deputy Mayor Hendricks?
Again, not a question so much as a comment. At some point, does the county levy get broken up so that we see how much of our levy goes to planning and to the various county services? Because I can't say I've seen that.
Morgan, you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
Well, maybe we can take it together, but to be honest, I've never seen a breakdown of service provided to a municipality in the county. It's more about a broad look across all of the municipalities. And then that's how planning was delivered to the local municipalities, is over the levy. They have a weighted formula based on, I think, 3 or 4 factors, Curtis, that basically defines what our levy contribution is to Middlesex County. I know they would be challenged to be able to break it down to a finite number that we would be able to specifically say that planning costs X amount of dollars as provisioned in the township of Adelaide Metcalfe. Ms. Mayor, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so if you looking at the county budget there, it doesn't define how much it costs per each municipality or how much time and wages is allocated to each municipality. In general, it's when we're looking at putting on the county levy, which took the triple majority of county council approving it, the majority of the population, which is with the lower tier municipalities, and all the lower tier councils as well approving it. At the time looking at it, it looked like the amount of time allocated to Adelaide Metcalfe, or say North Middlesex or Strathroy Caradoc or wherever it was very similar to the cost it would take to provide that service. So it's not, it would take quite a bit of work for the county to figure out now, how many dollars are put towards, say, Adelaide Metcalfe. But it's just, right now, it's just incorporated strictly into the county budget. So into the county budget, which is part of the levy. So at the end of the day, I'm sure we could ask Dirk to figure that out. But with the amount of service, the services that the county provides us, I think we're getting a very good deal with what we're getting compared to the dollars that are coming in for planning applications.
Yeah.
That probably didn't make a lot of sense. It made sense in my mind. It's just hard to explain because, yeah.
Well, I remember when we decided to take on planning as a service, or that we agreed to do planning through the county. And I know that it's proportional, and I guess what I'm looking for more of, let's say, of the county budget, let's say 50% is roads and 20% is this and 5% is planning. And we know roughly what our county levy is. So it would give us a ballpark figure of whether we're bringing in enough to pay for the planning, I guess.
Got it. I understand what you're saying now, and I'll ask that question. So I'm because Warden Burkhart Justin is second year in the warden seat. I, as the past warden, get to sit on the budget committee again, and we're starting the budget process next week at the county. So I'll ask that question to the planning department. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, because the county provides us with legal as well, but we know exactly, we get billed for that separately, do we not? Yeah, so I guess for transparency's sake, it would be interesting to know, what we're paying for. So yeah, I would think that they would be able to come up with something to be able to explain it.
Yeah, and the main difference between legal or IT or what other services we get from the county compared to planning is that the amount of applications that come forward compared to the assessment of the lower tiers is very similar to how it's distributed throughout the county. So that's why it was able to go onto the levy compared to legal, which it could be, Adelaide Metcalfe could be, hundreds of thousands, and then another municipality could be very low, and it doesn't correlate with the assessment that is in the county.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. That's probably what I should have said in the first place instead of rambling on. Alrighty. Do you have any other questions for the planning department? Seeing none. So we'll go on to the next one, which is drain maintenance.
You can see that?
Yep.
Okay, so drain maintenance, no changes from the previous budget, but Jen, I believe you have a question, maybe two?
Yeah, there's two questions. So one is the drain maintenance. It seems that the contract service is about double the normal budgeted salary expenses. Are we expecting a lot more work done here, like getting all the files completely updated? Adelaide Metcalfe was in a very fortunate position to be able to bring on the previous drainage superintendent for the salary. The contracted service is an all-inclusive and cost recovery firm, which includes wages and benefits, including vacation and time off banks, mileage, travel, training and development, conference attendance, cell phone, and management oversight to the provision of the service. And the last question, will the Grants Ontario be the same as 2020 year? A review of drains is currently underway. Depending on the outcome of this review that will be completed in 2021, will help to better understand the current situation for drains in the township.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Is there any questions at all for the drain maintenance budget? Not seeing any questions at all. Okay, so then the next one I see is the tile drainage.
Okay, so after this one, we'll just go back to animal control, but again, no changes and no questions submitted for this budget.
Is there any questions at all? Seeing none, let's jump back into that animal control budget.
Okay, I believe you can see that?
Yep.
Okay, so for this one, no changes and no questions. So I'll kick it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there any questions at all for the animal control budget at all? Okay, I don't see any questions.
So that concludes the budget by budget review. And I did not record any changes from council. So like I recorded them, but I recorded that we didn't have any changes.
I got it. Yeah. Alrighty. So that is the end of that. I know. So we just have one more presentation from report from Jen, which is about reserves from the 2020 budget. But before we get to that, is there any other questions at all that you thought of after we went through a department that we want to ask now? Are we all feeling comfortable? What we're looking at? Anything else? I don't see any hands going up. Okay. So, Jen, I guess want to go through that report, which will help shuffle budget items that were budgeted last year that will then go back into reserves, and then some of them will probably come back out of reserves to get some of these projects done.
Thanks, Mayor Smith. So this report is based off of $600,000 that council approved in last year's budget to be transferred. These projects have not been completed. So direction is needed from council as to what they want to do with these reserves. So the first one, 200,000, was asked to come out of capital purposes reserve, transferred into the administration portion of the revenue for office renovation, which did not happen. I have a recommendation there. Resolved that council approved to transfer the 200,000 back into the capital purposes reserve from the 2020 administration budget, as the office renovation project is not moving forward. Part of the issue for this report is because these transfers make an impact on the actuals for 2020. The second one I have there was 100,000 coming out of capital purposes reserves going into roadways for the engineering sand salt shed at the Adelaide Public Works Yard, and it was going into the expense side. That was to cover for the engineer costs, which did not take place in 2020. And my recommendation there, resolve that council approved to create a sand salt shed amalgamated garages reserve and reallocate 100,000 capital purposes from the 2020 budget to that reserve, because from my understanding, consultation with Morgan and Coulter, that the sand salt shed and or amalgamated garage is going to occur at some point. So if that's the case, you might as well start a reserve strictly for that. That way council will have a better understanding of what we have in funds for that particular project. The third one is was to take 200,000 out of recreation purposes reserves, and this was for Parks and Rec budget. So this is for Kerwood Park, and that is still moving forward from a report that council received in December 2020 from Chris Trainey. So I am proposing that because this is going to be a phased in project, that we should probably create a reserve called the Kerwood Upgrade. What do we got? Kerwood Park Upgrade Reserve, and we take the 200,000 that we took out of the park reserves and put it into that newly created reserve. That way council will have an idea of how many dollars they have in there. To keep it separate from the parks reserve is in somewhere down the line if we end up growing and we end up developing another park somewhere, perhaps closer to Strathroy, who knows, but it's to keep it separate because that's a separate project. The last one, there was $100,000 that was supposed to come out of the one-time modernization funding, and it was for the office renovation in the administration budget, which did not happen. So the proposal or recommendation there is to move that 100,000 back into the modernization one-time funding. With the capital purposes, you can reallocate it to another capital project. It's not designated to any specific department as long as it's a capital project. Just so that council's aware of that. But with the 600,000 that's there, it will impact actuals if it's not moved. So those are my recommendations to move them for 2021.
Alrighty, Councilor McKinnon, you have a question?
Yes, through you, Mayor Curtis, to Jennifer. Could you just go back to the first $200,000 one? And I kind of got lost in that one. Could you go through that one again for me, please?
Yep, so 200,000 council approved to move out of capital purposes reserves for the office renovation project that did not happen. They also approved 100,000 to come out of the one-time modernization fund, making a total of 300,000. So what I'm proposing is that the 200,000 go back into the capital purposes reserve and the 100,000 go back into the one-time modernization funding.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions at all? Okay, seeing none. So the first recommendation there is to resolve that council receive the 2020 budget transfer report as presented by the clerk acting treasurer.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. And then we have 4 more motions. So it's resolved that council approved the transfer of $200,000 back to the capital purposes reserve from the 2020 administration budget as the office renovation project is not moving forward. Okay, Councillor McKinnon and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor? And that's carried. And then the next one is resolved that council approved to create the sand salt shed / amalgamated garage reserves and reallocate the $100,000 capital purposes from the 2020 budget to this reserve. Okay, Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? And that's carried. And then the next one is resolved that council approved to create the Kerwood Park Upgrade Reserve and reallocate the $200,000 from the Recreation Purposes Reserve from the 2020 budget to that reserve. Okay, Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor, or do you have a question, Councillor Clark? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. And then the last one is resolved that council approved to transfer the $100,000 back to the one-time modernization fund as office renovation project is not moving forward. Okay, Councillor Clark and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? And that's carried.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so is there any other questions at all from members of council for the proposed budget? Okay, I think from the sounds of it, overall, everybody seems to be in agreement with. We just need to, there's a few more items we have to deal with in closed session in regards to some human resources strategies moving forward for 2021 and beyond, which will, that may affect the budget. So I don't think it makes sense to talk right now about what we're looking at for a increase to the overall budget or an increase to the tax rate, because we're not sure exactly what the discussions in closed will do to the bottom line of the proposed budget. So with that being said, Morgan, once we go into close and have some discussions there, we'll be coming back into open session live on YouTube. And the reason I ask that is just wondering if people, folks that are watching at home, if they should stick around and watch for part 2 of our council meeting. Or will it just
I would say we'd come out of closed and then rise and report based on what's occurred because that'll affect the budget potentially, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. So if there's nothing else, so we need a motion then to go into closed, and I'm assuming it's under the same sections, Jen?
Yes.
So that's under section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, sections B, D, J, and that's it of the Municipal Act. So we need a mover and seconder to go into close at 7:45. Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. And I'd like to thank everybody for watching